Number one, we go if there's been an accident or a fatality or a catastrophe. That's obviously the first place, or an imminent danger.
And so that's really one of the main things that we look for. What does management feel? How does management feel about safety and health? How do they communicate that to employees?
We try to get to industries and companies that have the high injury and illness rates. And in conjunction with that, the vast majority of our inspections are based on employee complaints or referrals, accidents, and fatalities.
December 1970. President Richard M. Nixon signed into law the Occupational Safety and Health Act, heralding a new era in the history of public efforts to protect workers from harm on the job. For the first time, this historic document established a nationwide federal program to protect almost the entire workforce from job-related death, injury, and illness. Replacing a haphazard conglomeration of regulations, the new act was hailed as the most significant legislative achievement for workers in a decade. The issue of safety in the workplace, including those in the stone industry, has never been the same. In establishing the nationwide program, the federal government made it a two-pronged effort to be managed by either federal OSHA or by state OSHA organizations. At a minimum, state programs must match the regulations promulgated by the federal government. Many have OSHA standards that exceed federal regulations. Today, 26 states have their own programs with enforcement provisions. The other 24 rely on federal OSHA. State and federal OSHA works. Since it took effect in 1971, workplace fatalities have declined more than 60%, and occupational injuries and illnesses by more than 40%. In its current 5-year plan, ending in 2008, the goals include reducing the current rate of workplace fatalities by 15% and reducing the rate of injuries by 20%. Compliance enforcement is still the core value of federal and state OSHA organizations. OSHA inspectors can arrive without notice, inspect a facility, issue citations, and fine businesses for violations, or give those in compliance a clean bill of health. OSHA points out that 32% of all inspections result in no violations. On the other hand, that means violations are found in 68% of all inspections. Keeping American businesses in compliance is a prodigious task. OSHA regulations protect more than 100 million employees in the nation, while more than 6.5 million employers, from small doctors' offices to huge corporations, are required to comply with OSHA. In a typical year, federal inspectors visit more than 25,000 companies, while state regulators make some 60,000 visits. Maintaining a safe workplace that is in compliance with both federal and state regulations is a team effort in any company. The primary beneficiary of a safe workplace is you. Management is required to follow regulations aimed at preventing injury, illness, and death. But without the cooperation of individual employees in developing a pervasive attitude of safety and bringing instances of perceived non-compliance to management's attention, meeting the goal of a perfectly safe workplace is all but impossible.
Management does not bear sole responsibility for safety and health. Employees absolutely have to buy into that process as well. Fortunately or unfortunately, depending upon your perspective, the OSHA Act does not allow for penalties directly to employees. So if there are violations of standards, then the employer is responsible for those violations. That doesn't mean that employers can't hold employees responsible, and they should.
Safety violations are extremely serious and may result in termination of the employee. Since many OSHA inspections are triggered by employee complaints, OSHA officials say inspections can be mitigated if companies have someone within the company to whom employees can first address complaints.
When employees call in and say, I think I've got an unsafe condition in my plant, whatever it might be, our question to them is, well, have you brought it to the attention of the employer? And many times they'll say, yes, I have, and they won't do anything. Or many times they'll say, no, I haven't, and we recommend that you do that first.
A major potential hazard in this industry involves working with slabs in the shop or on the residential or commercial job site. Each employee working with slabs must have a clear understanding that moving slabs in the shop, in residential applications, or high-rise construction has the potential for serious injury. That's why safety awareness is an integral part of every job. OSHA recently put out a special bulletin dealing with slab handling safety. OSHA also has a particular interest in silica.
Well, OSHA has had a special emphasis program on silica since 1996. So since then, we've been trying to make those improvements and get companies that have their employees exposed to silica reduced, have those exposures reduced. And we typically go in and make that assessment. If we go in on that enforcement inspection, we will do air monitoring of the employees who are potentially overexposed.
The assessment is made with a small piece of equipment that actually measures the amount of silica to which an employee may be exposed. In this industry, we not only wrestle with 1,000-pound-plus slabs and deal with dust and particles from stone products, we make constant use of hand tools, work in an environment that includes water and electricity, which generally don't mix, and work with hazardous materials. Every one of these areas is subject to OSHA regulations, and OSHA inspectors are rigorous in demanding compliance when they inspect businesses in the natural stone industry. The problem is you can't really know when your company will be singled out for a visit by an OSHA inspector from either the state or federal government. In fact, there's a good chance you will never be inspected, but you should always be prepared. In addition to responding to an employee complaint or as a follow-up to a fatality or other accident, OSHA may show up at the plant door as part of an enforcement program, targeting industries for specific potential violations. Sometimes another government agency inspecting a facility for other reasons may suggest that OSHA come knocking. Unless your company has arranged for a consulting visit to review compliance, OSHA inspectors simply don't give you a warning when they are coming. That means the best way to prepare for an inspection is to be in compliance all of the time. Then you don't need to worry. After the inspection, the decision as to whether a facility will be fined is not made on site. It is made by the area ocean director, who decides whether to issue citations and levy fines, or in some drastic situations, completely shut the facility until corrections are made.
Citations are classified as serious or other. Some examples of other types of citations are repeat, willful, failure to abate, and other serious. We'll focus on serious violations in this video. A serious violation is anything that can cause death or a serious injury or illness. Penalties for serious violations begin at $1,500, but this fine can be adjusted on the basis of various considerations, including such factors as the size of the organization, demonstration of good faith, and an absence of a history of OSHA violations. On the other hand, if a company willfully violates OSHA regulations, the penalty can be multiplied 10 times for each violation.
Of course, whatever the fine, nothing can bring back the life of a fellow employee fatally injured in an accident or repair permanent injuries and health issues suffered by others. Now, what can you expect from an OSHA inspection?
They'll generally start out by asking to see and reviewing any written safety or health programs that the company might have in place. They may ask to review injury and illness logs to see what kind, if any, injuries have been occurring within the facility. After that, we really get into the meat and potatoes of the inspection, which is what we call the walk-around or the actual inspection itself. And depending upon why the compliance officer is there, will dictate how much of that facility he's there to inspect. It might only take 30 minutes, it might take a full day or longer. to actually do the inspection.
In any event, a project manager or senior company representative should meet with the OSHA inspector and accompany that person during the entire inspection until the inspector has left the premises. The purpose of this program is not only to make you aware of OSHA's reach, both at the federal and state level, but to single out the top issues that can result in citations, fines, or other factions.
Number 1. Probably the first thing an OSHA inspector will look for during an inspection is a written HAZCOM, or Hazard Communication Program. This documentation tells what kinds of hazardous or dangerous materials are in the building. The inspector will want to see a written policy on labeling procedure, a material safety data sheet, MSDS, for each chemical on site, and employee training logs. A hazard is defined as anything that may cause an adverse effect. HAZCOM meetings must be held whenever a new hazardous condition occurs or a new hazardous material is introduced. Every new employee must be given a HAZCOM briefing prior to that employee going into an area involving hazardous materials. Logs must be kept outlining the date, time, subject matter covered, and who conducted the training. There also must be a sign-in roster showing who attended. In cases where the employees have been exposed to noise levels above the permissible exposure limit, 85 decibels for an 8-hour duration, see OSHA tables for safe guidelines. The company needs to keep a record of baseline hearing tests for each worker in the shop. OSHA will take a close look at residual hearing loss testing and tracking. The company also will be asked to provide documentation on training for such specialists as forklift and overhead crane operators, and current certification and operating permits for all equipment of this kind. As the inspector makes rounds of the shop, he or she will look for posted safety notices for employees and to determine whether they are in Spanish or English.
The message here is to keep very good records. Number 2, failure to provide information and training on hazardous chemicals to employees. This will almost always trigger a citation.
Number 3, the inspector will take a close look at electrical conductors. Citations can result if there is no protection of connectors going into boxes, cabinets, or fittings. Number 4, no electrical covers and/or canopies. The best way to avoid a problem here is to have all outlets tested to assure they are properly grounded. Covers and canopies can be fixed if spotted during an inspection.
Additionally, if you don't have GFCI-type electrical outlets in your shop, it's a good idea to provide them. They will help fabricators from having a shocking experience.
Number 5, grinder guards. Guards should always be placed close to wheels. Safety glasses should be nearby with a printed safety warning to always wear them when using grinders. Remember this, in the eyes of OSHA, nothing can be operated without a guard. Number 6, hard hats. The hard hats must be compliant to standards set by ANSI, the American National Standards Institute. Inspectors will especially look at their use on commercial and residential construction sites or in areas where overhead cranes are in operation. Number 7, protection against falls. Inspectors will look for insufficient protection against falls in the workplace. All working surfaces 6 feet and higher from ground level must have guardrails, safety nets, or other protection systems. Number 8, fire extinguishers. The inspector will want to know if there are an adequate number of ABC-rated fire extinguishers in the shop
and where they are located. A good rule of thumb is a fire extinguisher every 50 feet. Fire extinguishers are also required in all trucks, forklifts, and on job sites as well. The OSHA inspector will also look for documentation of a fire safety escape plan and escape route. Number 9. Flexible electrical cords. The inspector will focus on improper use of cords, residential cords being used in the workplace, and non-ANSI approved cords being used. As mentioned before, electrical outlets should be changed to GFCI if they are not that type now. With water an important component in a stone shop, the type of outlets and use of cords is a critical issue. Number 10. Failure to have an updated OSHA Form 300 log and any copies on file which list work-related injuries and illnesses. This log should be updated daily if possible. You never know when the OSHA inspector will show up at the door. You'll also need to have OSHA Form 301 reports for the past 5 years. Number 11. A major part of the inspection will also include personal protection equipment, or PPE, used by associates in the facility. These include ANSI-approved safety glasses for eye protection, earplugs, earmuffs and noise-canceling headphones for hearing protection, proper face masks and other devices for respiratory protection, hard-toe shoes to protect against falling material, safety gloves, safety harnesses for use on lifts, protective aprons and wetsuits, and protective rubber boots. Number 12. Cleanliness of the shop, including elements of dust containment and the amount of dust allowed to accumulate. Number 13. The inspector will also look at other safety indicators, such as the location of safety boundary markers, LP gas tank containment, and hazardous material storage. Every facility should have an appropriate fireproof cabinet for flammable materials. It sounds like quite a list, and it is. Safety in the workplace is serious business, and you can never be too cautious or have too much information about it. We can't emphasize enough how important it is for you to be the safety eyes and ears of management in your workplace. If you see something that doesn't look right, contact your supervisor immediately. Wear the proper personal safety equipment wherever indicated and keep a neat workspace at all times. Once your company is cited or fined, there's a good chance OSHA will be back again and maybe again to make sure you are in compliance. But if you do all of those things and follow the procedures and guidelines described in this video, chances are your company will pass an unannounced OSHA inspection with flying colors. And that's what it's all about. Partnering with OSHA to assure compliance and a safe working environment.
The way I've always approached going in and doing those inspections is to be upfront with the employer, tell them exactly why we're there. We truly are there to be able to help them better protect their employees for safety and health.
Our purpose is, and our goal is really the same one as yours, is to make sure you have a safe and healthy workplace.
An employer should be looking at his or her employees no differently than his or her own family members. An employer has a duty to make sure that employees go home safe at the end of the day. The employee has a responsibility to make sure that he or she is complying with whatever rules the employer has set forth for that particular shop.
OSHA compliance. It will make you a whole lot safer.